When I was a kid in the Ozarks, I remember staring up at the sky and wondering if a kid in China sneezed the way that I did, the same way I did, or if they sneezed at all. I wasn't thinking about culture or language or politics. I was trying to solve this riddle that actually had haunted me even back then. How can we live such different lives and still be made of the same stuff? Well, that question stalked me from those dirt roads and hillbilly kitchens through the Indian ways of seeing the world, through the achievement game, through the world of criminals and psychopaths, through the quiet kindness of people who had almost nothing and gave anyway. At some point, I realized I was watching a whole economy of spirit at work long before I knew any words like economics or spirituality. I'm Mark Roach. This is Transcendent. Amongst many aspects of my life in business, athletics, and art, I've spent decades watching how people trade their power away, and how they sometimes claw it back in watching in boardrooms, locker rooms, some places that you'd never expect. But by the end of this, I hope you'll see how trickle-down economics is not just a failed financial idea, but a spiritual blueprint that a lot of us swallowed without knowing it. And you'll be able to notice the exact moment you hand your authority to an institution, a relationship, or a belief. And you'll have a simple way to start reclaiming that inner kingdom, perhaps the same one that Jesus pointed to without needing anyone else's permission. Let me start with how this showed up in my actual life. Growing up in the Ozarks, I saw 5 different economies of being human. There was the hillbilly way, where survival, humor, and stubbornness were the currency. There was the Indian way, where the land, the unseen were not concepts but neighbors. There was the achievement and conformist way, where grades, trophies, and titles became the coins you spent to buy belonging. There was the way of the criminal, the psychopath, where manipulation and domination were how you printed your own money. Then there was the way of the endearing person, that one grandma or neighbor who somehow stayed kind in the middle of all of it. All 5 are living in our communities today, and you can walk into any office building or family gathering and see them acting out their roles, trading, bargaining, borrowing, defaulting. Here's where this becomes clear. In that mix, I absorbed a simple, maybe toxic idea. Value lives up there, up the hill, up the hierarchy, in the hands of the teacher, the preacher, the boss, the government, the guru, the expert. My job was to hustle, sacrifice, and prove myself. So one day, something finally would trickle down to me. Well, that's the outer vision of trickle-down economics. If we just feed enough money and power to the top, blessings will flow down to the rest of us. But there's an inner version too. Call it trickle-down spirituality. It's the belief that if we can just get close enough to the right church or the right teacher or the right brand of enlightenment, the right institution, then holiness and worth and peace will drip down into us like some divine bonus plan. I've lived inside that delusion at the highest levels. I've raised huge sums of money. I've been in the middle of transactions with more zeros than most people ever see. I've been around the rich and the famous and powerful, and I've watched something heartbreaking. The more we funnel our attention, our trust, and spiritual hunger into external institutions, the more these institutions start to look like gods, and we start to look like their worshipers. They become almost robotic entities. A church, a government, a corporation, an army, a cause, a celebrity, a guru. At first, they carry a real seed, a genuine insight, a flash of courage. But over time, that seed gets buried under the machinery, and the machinery that grows up and gets built around it. And because we already handed them our power, we barely even notice when they drift away from the very thing that made them sacred to us in the first place. And here's why this matters. Once you've projected your power, your attention, and your authority onto something outside of yourself, you don't just trust it, you start defining yourself by it. You no longer are wrestling with your soul in real time with life. You are a good member, a loyal follower, a true believer, a patriotic citizen, a spiritual person from this lineage or that school. Well, that label becomes the paycheck that your ego gets for outsourcing its responsibility. And like any paycheck, one you depend on, you will ignore most anything to keep it coming. Abuse, corruption, hypocrisy, cruelty dressed up as righteousness. We call this loyalty. Many times it's simply spiritual trickle-down economics doing exactly what it was designed to do. Now watch how this connects to spirituality. 2,000 years ago, Jesus said something that should have detonated that entire model. The kingdom is within you. Not within the temple, not within the approval of the religious establishment, not within the Roman state, but within you. And yet, even his closest companions, men who walked beside him, watched him and loved him, struggled to grasp what he was actually doing. When Peter stepped out off the boat to walk on water, he wasn't just trying to perform a miracle. He was trying to borrow holiness from the man in front of him instead of trusting the presence that was already within him. He sank, not because the water was mean, but because fear and borrowed faith cannot carry the weight of a living soul. This is the key point. Neither institutions nor organizations nor ideologies nor relationships are inherently holy. There are containers, structures, something they're helpful. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're violent, sometimes they're both. Only humans have the capacity to be fueled by spirit and to challenge each other to live from that core. And even then we falter, we wobble, we make the container for the presence that once filled it. In a primal world, Jesus did what he could to point us back to that inner source. I mean, you can believe he fulfilled some cosmic mission or not. What matters practically is that he pointed the way from trickle-down holiness towards something inside your own chest that no priest, professor, CEO, influencer can own. I can't own it for you. I didn't understand any of this in those early years back in the Ozarks, or many of the decades since. I just knew it hurt. I knew I felt different. I knew I was being pulled through experiences that spanned beauty and brutality. And when I eventually left the Ozarks and walked into the very places the church pews had whispered about, corporate towers, oil fields, art studios, film sets, locker rooms, I achieved things from the outside. Looked like proof I had climbed the mountain or that God was behind me or with me and won the game. And then piece by piece, my life dismantled that illusion. Didn't feel right. It wasn't right. And I've literally died twice. Each time I came back confused and and honestly a little irritated, wondering, why am I still here? The answer I heard wasn't mystical frameworks. It was a quiet, persistent message. You still have something to share, Mark, and you still have people to stand beside in this strange body of work, this meat suit in this life. Stay with me here, because this is where it gets crucial. Today, if you look at my life from the outside, you might see fasting, living with less, stripping away comforts, walking away from certain achievements. And you might think I've fallen off the ladder. But internally, there's an entirely different economy forming. I'm nurturing an inner quest. I don't even like calling it a path. The word is too smooth. I feel lost a lot of the time. I don't always want to be here. But then I encounter people, individuals, groups, families, a moment of eye contact at a gas station or a grocery line, a message, a conversation where, for a second, love breaks through the armor. I realize the only real wealth that I have, maybe the only real wealth I ever had, is in the capacity to be present when that magic happens. This is a different model than the trickle-down spirituality. The trickle-down spirituality, inspiration flows from the top down, from the guru on the stage to the rows and the students, from the mega church pastor to the crowd, from the brand to the followers. In the kingdom within model, inspiration happens horizontally, like electricity between 2 points. It's not owned, it's not controlled, it's not licensed. The magic can happen through these glorified replicas on screens that we mistake for reality. And it can happen in person, in what we call real life. The medium is less important than the direction. Are you giving your power away, or are you letting something alive move through you while you remain rooted in yourself? What makes this especially hard right now is that we've built a civilization that trains us to live almost entirely in our heads. People bury themselves in books, degrees, theories, and ideologies. They live as if the mind were the whole person and the body is a necessary inconvenience that hauls the brain from one meeting to the next. Then they funnel their power through that narrow channel into something external. A party, a platform, an army, a spiritual school, a cause, or a celebrity who becomes a kind of mirror they hoped will finally reflect them as worthy. Over the last 20 years, as transparency has increased, we've watched these external idols fall in ugly stories, one after another, scandals, hypocrisy, double lives. And still, many of us keep returning to the same idol or model, hoping the next one won't betray us. So here's why this matters to you. It's not just a theory, but you could wake up tomorrow with this and things could really change. You could begin to see this pattern. You can track the exact moment when you externalize your authority. Listen to the way you talk or feel. They will fix it. They will save us. They will tell us what's true. They will give us permission. They will help keep us safe. They will make it fair. Well, that word they, past, present, or future, is often a red flag. Sometimes it's necessary. We do need each other. We need institutions to coordinate certain parts of our life. But spirituality, when they becomes the source of your meaning, you have silently signed up for trickle-down grace. You've agreed to wait at the bottom of the pyramid with your cup, hoping for a drop. So what's the alternative in practical terms? First, you start very small. You stop trying to prove your holiness by copying someone else's walk on water. You stop trying to look like your favorite spiritual figure. You stop confusing the feeling of being near power with the reality of having access to your own power. You acknowledge without shame that you might be lost, that you might not want to be here, that you might feel numb or furious, or numb and furious at the same time. And instead of outsourcing that discomfort to a doctrine or a bottle or a leader or a lifestyle brand, you bring it back home. You breathe into your own chest and say quietly, if there is any kingdom, any spirit, any holiness, it has to be able to survive contact with this moment right here and help me through this pain in my body, in this life, in this moment. Let me show you what I mean by application. Think of one place in your life where you've put someone or something on a pedestal. It might be a spiritual teacher, a partner, a political leader, someone really smart, maybe a company you worked for, a movement that belonged to you, or a book, or a polarity that gives you a place to feel safe. Now ask yourself 3 questions. 1, what did they hope would give, or what did I hope they would give me that I didn't believe I could cultivate in myself? 2, how have I ignored my own discomfort or intuition to stay in good standing with them? 3, what tiny act could I take this week to bring even 10% of that power back inside my own life? Maybe it's telling the truth in a conversation that you usually avoid. Maybe it's taking one day off from news or social media, or seeing what remains of you in the silence. Maybe it's just sitting alone and asking honestly, what do I actually know from experience beyond all the theories that I've inherited? Or what, do I really believe what I think and say I believe? If you're someone who has lived with trauma or complex PTSD, this can be even trickier when your nervous system has been wired by pain, threat, or betrayal. External authority can feel like safety. The rules are clear, the hierarchy is clean. Someone else is in charge, so if things go wrong, it must be your fault or their failure, not the system itself. This channel began as a resource for people navigating complex PTSD, but Transcendent is for everyone, every human being who faces pain or transformation at various points in life. What matters is the journey away from outdated patterns and toward a spirit that cannot be duplicated by artificial intelligence or healed through force. That's what we explore here. Here's the irony at the center of this whole conversation. If the kingdom is within you, then any attempt to turn a cause into God, to fill an institution with spirit and treat it as holy, is not just a mistake. It becomes a kind of subtle evil. It divides. It says the sacred lives over there in that building, with that group, under that flag, behind that paywall. It turns your ordinary life into something you endure while waiting for a real life to arrive later in heaven, in success, in enlightenment, in retirement, in the next relationship or the next election. And all the while, the quiet intelligence that brought you back from the edge, that kept your heart beating, that nudge that you felt toward love, when you least expected it, maybe it waits patiently inside you, unconsulted. My own life, especially after dying twice and returning, has convinced me of one simple, uncomfortable thing. If I am still here, there is something left to give, not as a guru, not as an institution, as one human being in a meat suit intersecting with other humans in theirs. Sometimes that happens on camera through these strange rectangles that we confuse with reality. Sometimes it happens in a grocery store aisle where the form doesn't matter. What matters is whether I'm showing up from that inner kingdom or from some desperate attempt to look spiritual, successful, or saved in the eyes of a system that was never designed to see me. If you want to explore this further, you can find my work and more than 20 books at roachcreative.com. I'm Mark Roach. This is Transcendent. Wishing you all the best. The kingdom was never meant to trickle down to you. It was always meant to wake up inside you.